everyone, and welcome back to the George Collection. I'm Rachel Rightside Blonde. Today I want to talk about Donald Trump and Richard Nixon. They have a lot in common.
In 1987, I remember Ronald Reagan in Death Valley days. I said, this person should be president. I just remember thinking that. Whatever it is, it's an X factor. And clearly he had the same X factor. Mrs. Nixon saw him on a TV show, The Donahue Show, in 1987, and said to her husband, Dick, I think this guy's really got something, and he wants to run for office. And the president wrote a letter to Donald Trump saying, when you run, you're going to win. You've got that extra X factor, whatever it is. And Donald Trump has treasured that letter, and it's on his wall. He's going to take it down to the White House and be part of it there, because he was thinking even back then of the presidency.
But to compare Nixon to Donald Trump, to use a metaphor from these storms that are hitting Washington and elsewhere this afternoon, Nixon is a lightning bug. Donald Trump is a lightning storm that threatens to knock out our power grid. This is a level of magnitude that is way, way, way beyond Nixon.
I am the law and order candidate.
Trump echoed Richard Nixon, whose 1968 White House campaign vowed law and order at a time of civil rights and anti-war activism.
As far as this problem of law and order is concerned, I am for law and order. I have never heard or seen such outrageous, vicious, distorted reporting in 27 years of public life.
What is it about the television coverage of you in these past weeks and months that has so aroused your anger?
Don't get the impression that you arouse my anger. One can only be angry with those he respects.
Tomorrow they will say, Donald Trump rants and raves at the press. I'm not ranting and raving. I'm just telling you, you're dishonest people. But I'm not ranting and raving.
The fake news media is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people.
I've discussed the connection between Richard Nixon and Donald Trump before, but I wanted to go a little further in detail this time because I've learned some things about this connection, and that is that Richard Nixon actually mentored Donald Trump. This wasn't just a friendly relationship. There was actual teaching involved here, and Donald Trump took a lot of pointers from Richard Nixon. As we all know, John Kennedy Jr. and Donald Trump were friends.
To know John Kennedy very well, John. Fantastic. I think he would have been president. But 21%, JFK Jr., who's a very nice person. I know him very well.
And Richard Nixon and Donald Trump were friends, so now is it any wonder why John Kennedy Jr. decided to put Richard Nixon, who is Donald Trump's mentor, on the cover of his first anniversary issue? I don't think so. So let's explore this relationship a little more and actually read some of the letters that Richard Nixon and Donald Trump used to send back and forth to each other. Here are some snippets from a Politico article back from 2020. They were two men in Manhattan who craved the same thing, validation. One was a brash young real estate developer looking to put his stamp on New York, the other a disgraced elder statesman bent on repairing his reputation. That's how a 30-something Donald Trump and a 70-ish Richard Nixon struck up a decade-long full summer correspondence in the 1980s that meanders from football and real estate to Vietnam and media strategy. The letters between once and future presidents show the two men engaged in something of an exercise in mutual affirmation. I think that you are one of this country's great men, and it was an honor to spend an evening with you, Trump writes to Nixon in June of 1982, less than 8 years after Nixon resigned the presidency. The two had been spotted together in the 21 nightclub, and Trump was writing Nixon to thank him for forwarding a photo. The next fall, it was Nixon chiming in. Let me be so presumptuous as to offer a little free advice, which is worth, incidentally, exactly what it costs, Nixon writes to Trump. Nixon, who played football in college and never lost his love for the game, then unspools detailed thoughts on how Trump should handle the New Jersey Generals football team. Trump, for his part, is unabashed about one of his aims for the relationship. One of my great ambitions is to have the Nixons as residents in Trump Tower, he writes in October. But the Nixons ended up declining. Trump said shortly after the 2016 election that Nixon would write him letters, and it was very interesting. He always wanted me to run for office. What motivated the correspondence between a young man seeking a bright future and an ex-president with a dark past? Nixon expert Luke Nichter, a professor at Texas A&M Central Texas, says the two men saw something similar in each other. That toughness, that guts, even being beaten up and coming back. Their letters didn't travel far. They were only 4 miles apart in New York City. The two men bonded over themes that resonate today, a shared distrust of the media, a desire to maximize TV ratings, the idea of using people as props, and more. Nixon tells Trump, "The people in the stands, apart from what they pay for their tickets, are indispensable props for the television broadcast, which in the future is where the real money lies." Only one of the Trump-Nixon letters was widely known about previously, a 2-sentence December 1987 note that Nixon writes after his wife saw Trump on Phil Donahue's talk show. "Pat Nixon thought Trump did great," Nixon writes. "As you can imagine, she is an expert on politics, and she predicts that whenever you decide to run for office, you will be a winner," Nixon adds. The last letter was written January 26, 1993, where Trump writes to Nixon not long after his 80th birthday to thank him for a birthday photo and says, "You are a great man, and I have had and always will have the utmost respect and admiration for you. I am proud to know you." Nixon died in April 1994. There is, however, one big difference between Donald Trump and Richard Nixon, and Trump himself put this out there, and he said, "He left. I don't leave." A big difference. Interesting. I've highlighted the similarities between Richard Nixon and Donald Trump in terms of criticism from the press in previous episodes of the George Collection, but now knowing how deep this relationship actually ran between a mentorship and letters, and maybe a connection between John Kennedy Jr. as well, with being on the first anniversary issue, it certainly adds another puzzle piece to this puzzle we're trying to put together. I think we're going to be shocked when this is all said and done, when we find out who's all been involved and how long this plan's been going on. And I consider Richard Nixon somewhat of a media martyr. Though he didn't want to, he took one for the team, and in doing so, he revealed the press's playbook, the deep state's playbook, when it comes to using their propaganda arm to ruin a president. I kind of look at it like this. Richard Nixon's up to bat, Donald Trump's on third base, there's only one out. Richard Nixon hits a high fly ball to center field. Trump tags up, waits for the center fielder to catch the ball, and he throws it home, but it's too late. Donald Trump has already scored the winning run, and America wins. Did Nixon want to get out at first? Probably not. But in going through what he went through and sharing what he knew with Donald Trump and others, he helped progress the plan forward, because this time around, maybe we were a little more prepared for it. And I just really want to apologize to Richard Nixon for being wrong about him this whole time. And I think Americans are going to come to that realization here very soon as well. That does it for this episode of the George Collection. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.
Of this extraordinary magazine, George, which is a hoot of a magazine. I thought you were a lawyer.
I was.
What happened?
Well, we decided, actually taking cue from folks like yourself and you around the 1992 election, that there was an opportunity here to change the definition of a political magazine. Certainly the way Americans were accessing information about politics and politicians was changing. Candidates were appearing on late night talk shows, on talk radio, on sitcoms, and there was a kind of a leveling process, and while the rest of media clearly had caught up with that, we felt that political magazines per se hadn't.
Your mother was a hell of an editor at Doubleday.
That's what I hear.
Would she have liked George?
I think she would have.